hear a telephone conversation between a travel consultant and a customer. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Good afternoon, Dreamtime Travel. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. I'm interested in the holidays you offer along the coast near here.
Yes, we operate several tours up the coast. Where in particular did you want to go?
Well, I like the sound of the holiday that mentioned whales. Was it, whale watching?
Oh, that's our whale watch experience. It's very popular, and it's based in a lovely little town with nice beaches.
Oh, right. And how long does it last?
It's 2 days. That includes 4 hours travel time each way from here.
Good. I don't want to be away any longer than that. So, is that by coach?
Actually, it's by minibus. We like to keep those tours small and personal, so we don't take a whole coachload of people. In fact, we only take up to 15 people on this tour, although we do run it with just 12 or 13.
Oh, right. So, do you run these tours often?
Well, it depends on the time of year. Of course, in peak times, like the summer holidays, we do them every weekend, but at the moment, it's usually once a month at most.
And when is the next one going?
Let me see. There's one in 3 weeks' time, which is April the 18th, and then we don't have another one until June the 2nd.
All right. And is April a good time to go?
Pretty good, though the really good time is later in the year. I have to say, though, that the whale sighting is only one of the many things offered.
Really?
Yes, the hotel itself where you stay has great facilities. It's called the Palisades.
The Paris what?
No, it's actually the Palisades. Pallissades. It's right on the main beach there.
Oh, I see.
All of the rooms have nice views, and the food is really good there too.
Oh, right.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
And what about the other things, that are included in the price?
Oh, there are lots of things. If you don't want to do the whale watch cruise, your guide will take anyone who is interested either on a bushwalk through the national park near the hotel, and there's no extra charge for that, or on a fishing trip. That's an extra $12, I think. And there's also a reptile park in town. That costs more or less the same.
No, I think I'd prefer whales to snakes.
Yeah. And if you just want to relax, you're free to sit by the hotel pool or go down the beach. Oh, and they also have tennis courts at the hotel, but you have to pay for those by the hour. But there are table tennis tables downstairs, and they're part of the accommodation package. Just speak to your guide.
Well, that sounds good. So how much is the basic tour price?
At this time of year, it's usually around $300, but let me check. It's actually $280.
And the next tour, are there any places on that one?
How many people is it for?
There are 2 of us.
Yes, that should be fine. Can I just mention that we require all bookings to be made at least 14 days before you travel to avoid cancellations of tours? And if you cancel within 7 days of departure, you will have to pay 50% of your total booking.
Okay.
And you also need to pay a 20% deposit, at the time of booking.
Can I pay that by credit card?
Yes, you can.
All right, what I'll do is I'll talk to my partner and get back to you.
Fine. So I'll make a provisional booking, shall I? 2 for the whale watch experience. Let me issue you with a customer reference number for when you call back. Do you have a pen?
Yes.
OK. It's 39745T. That's T for Tango. When you call back, ask to speak to the tour manager. That's me, Tracy.
Fine, I will.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2.
You will hear a radio program giving parents advice about buying cots for their babies to sleep in. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello and welcome to today's Buyer Beware program, where we give you some tips on how to spend your money wisely. Now, in today's show, we're looking at beds for children and babies. Let's start by looking at baby cots. That's for children of up to 3 years old. We tested 3 different cots, all in the budget price range, and as usual, we will feature the good points, the problems, and our verdict. The first cot we looked at was by BabySafe, and it had several good points to recommend it. Our testers liked the fact that it had 4 wheels, so it was easy to move around. The only slight problems with this cot were that it had no brakes, but they didn't think that mattered too much. At first they were a bit concerned about the side bar because they felt babies could trap their fingers in it. But our testers felt that this was unlikely to happen, so they've given this one a verdict of satisfactory. The next cot was by Choice Cots, and this time our testers were pleased to find a cot which is simple to put together, unlike others we looked at. On the minus side, our testers did not like the fact that the side of the cot did not drop down, making it difficult to pick up newborn babies. However, the real problem with this cot was the space between the bars. Our testers found they were too wide and a baby could easily trap his head. We felt this was a real safety hazard, and so we've labelled this one dangerous, I'm afraid.
Before you hear the rest of the program, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
And finally, better news for the Mother's Choice cot. This cot was slightly different in that although the sidebar did not drop down, the base could be raised or lowered into 2 different positions, making it safe as well as convenient. The negatives for this one were quite minor. The only niggle everyone had was the fact that it has no wheels, and the only other problem anyone could find was that there were pictures, which were simply stuck on and so could easily become detached. The makers have now promised to discontinue this practice. As this cot will then be safe in every way, we have made the Mother's Choice cot our best buy. Congratulations, Mother's Choice. So what features should you look for in a baby's cot? Well, obviously, safety is a very important factor, as well as comfort and convenience. We recommend that if you are buying a cot, do make sure that any metal present is not rusted or bent in any way. You should ensure your cot has only rounded or smooth edging without any sharp edges. This is especially important for wooden cots. And now, on to beds for toddlers.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3.
You will hear a college professor and 2 students talking about a course on shooting video projects. First, listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25. You now have some time to read questions 21 to 25.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Professor Edwards. What's happening?
Well, the department head just told me I've got to teach this course on making video documentaries. I know you two are really into videos. That documentary you made last term on homeless people was fantastic, and I've never thought this course before. I'm an old-fashioned film man, so I thought I'd get some suggestions from you on how to design this course.
Well, I don't know if we can be much help, but we'll try.
How exactly do you think we can help you?
I suppose the first thing is, how much do most of the students know about video cameras? I don't want to waste time telling them stuff they already know.
Actually, some of them have video cameras, but they only use them for home movies, that type of thing.
Yeah, I don't think many of them know much about their cameras. Just point and shoot.
So maybe I should start with the basics of the video camera.
I think so. Otherwise, they will just put the thing on automatic and lose out on a lot of really good things you can do if you control the camera more yourself.
I agree. But do you expect everyone to have their own video camera?
Too expensive for a lot of them, but they can rent them. Doesn't cost too much. £5 to £15 a day, I think. Depends on the model. The thing I'm most interested in is getting them to plan their projects properly and be creative in their use of what they've got.
Doesn't the film department have some cameras students can use?
I checked that out. They've only got 3. Probably not enough.
Do you think they need broadcast quality cameras? 3 CCDs, expensive stuff.
As the conversation continues, please answer questions 26 to 30. You now have some time to read questions 26 to 30.
No need. Single CCD. A bit of zoom. Wide angle for indoor stuff and scenery. Basic functions will do.
You mean camera angles, shooting from interesting positions, creative lighting, that sort of thing.
Kind of.
But that's much the same as you teach in your film courses.
Guess you're right. But I want to think of things you can do with a video camera that you can't do with a film camera.
Aha, secret shooting. Much easier to film people without their knowing with a tiny video camera than it is with a big film camera. Make a little hole in your pocket and off you go.
And if you're not happy with something, You just erase it and do it again, if you can.
Good point. But there's a question of privacy here. Is it fair to film people without their knowing?
Unless you're a cop or something. I suppose it's not. But it's often the only way to get what you want.
I don't worry about these things. I just want to make good movies. Can't always do that if people know you're filming them.
Well, I've never been taken to court for filming people without their knowing. But I agree, sometimes you have to.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4.
You are going to hear a lecture about various issues in land management and ownership systems by Professor Fred Roberts. You now have some time to read questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all looking so full of energy. Today I'm going to give an overview of some general principles and issues relating to land management and ownership. Very important. If we look at history, it seems that much of it concerns conflict over religion, economic power and land. Often all three factors are involved together. The first question one asks when talking about land is, who owns it? What you can do with land you own depends on one's political views. A far-right conservative may say ownership is the socially supported power to do what you want with the land you own, with no control by government as long as what you do with it doesn't hurt others. You can imagine how different factions interpret hurt others. By contrast, the political left, socialists and, more to the left, communists say land ownership, private land ownership that is the root cause of much injustice in the world, and that the social protection of private land ownership can result in tyranny and oppression. They therefore argue for state, public and cooperative forms of land ownership. I would mention here that most of us take for granted the idea that everything must be owned by a person, people or an organisation. But some societies, notably some native North American tribes, seem to have no concept of personal ownership. It was normal for them simply to take anything they needed and for others to take it from them if they needed it. When European settlers came, the Indians behaved as usual, which led the Europeans to seeing them as thieves. But the European settlers grabbed the Native Americans' land, their most important possession. So who were the real thieves? However, in this day and age, it would be futile to think of getting rid of the concept of ownership. But let me return to land ownership. It's a complex issue. For example, should the owner have exclusive control over the rights of way, like traditional footpaths, or the migration routes of wild animals, or the ecologically important wetlands? Should the owner be allowed to destroy the whole lot by building expensive houses everywhere? Or what if the owner discovers hidden treasure that once belonged to the royal family? All such things raise questions of the rights of the owner as opposed to the rights of others, including animals perhaps. Clearly, divergent views on such questions are a constant source of argument. What did the classical economists say about land ownership? Their positions were often rather ambiguous. Many of them seemed to consider it a necessary evil, and argued that it could not be defended if there was not some obligation to keep and improve the land. This is the concept of stewardship, that the land must be kept in good condition for future generations. But what if the owners were good stewards of their vast estates, but millions were going hungry. The Marxist answer was, and still is, land reform as a means of social justice. And in the 20th century, I mentioned ecological issues just now. Other reasons for legally restricting the rights of landowners have emerged. You can't cut the trees down because it would cause soil erosion that can spoil rivers hundreds of miles away. Pollution, the need to protect biodiversity, things that reduce the level of what we called nature's services to the general public, all have led to more restrictions on landowners' rights, at least in some countries, especially Europe. At the same time, property taxes have steadily increased to pay for essential services offered by the state or local government, such as firefighting. As these threats to the health of our planet get more serious, some people have argued that the ownership of natural capital, forests, wetlands, etc., will more and more be controlled by communal and not by private bodies. For example, the use by multinational companies of native plant varieties for modified crops and new drugs, plants that they seldom paid for in the past, are now increasingly recognized as belonging to the cultures or ecosystems from which they originated. But it seems to me that having the land and its flora and fauna owned by governments is no guarantee that they'll be used wisely, rather than for short-term profit. The evidence is that local ownership protected by law is usually the best answer. Okay, it will soon be time for a break, but before we have our coffee, I will give the answers to the two questions I asked you last time. What are the differences between leasehold and freehold? Essentially, the former allows possession for a limited time, while the latter is a special right granting the full use of real estate for an indeterminate time. In this country, most houses are sold with the land and the house itself freehold, whereas many flats are sold with a lease which was issued by the freeholder to the original leaseholder. The flat is then effectively owned by the leaseholder for an agreed number of years.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the Ielts test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.